Hello, welcome back. This is another episode of Pump the Brakes. I'm your host, Eric Evans. You can follow me on Twitter @_Pump the Brakes. You can follow my personal account @EvansEric10. I would much rather you follow the Pump the Brakes account as we're trying to build that up. On today's episode, I have a reoccurring guest, the first reoccurring guest. He was the first guest of Edmonds. And we're going to be talking GOATs. For those of you who don't know, that is the greatest of all time. Or as we like to call good friend of the podcast, Ham, after his Super Bowl bets, going a clean 5-0 and also giving you a 50-1 outright winner in Brooks Koepka. We are talking GOATs. And also that guy, Tom Brady, won his 7th ring. Would like to just also give a shout out for those of you that are NASCAR fans and that can see behind me the banner. This is the 20th anniversary of probably the NASCAR GOAT, Dale Earnhardt. So race hell, praise Dale, baby. I'm sure you guys have reached out to me already. If you haven't done so already, I'm sure you will. Carson Wentz has been traded from the Philadelphia Eagles. Earlier today, I did an emergency break podcast where I gave my thoughts, and I didn't really go in as hard as I wanted to. I try to keep it somewhat normal. There was no video of it. It's just a recording. My thoughts on the Wentz trade. But first, today's episode is brought to you by our good friends at Backroads Apparel. Whether you chase the migration, live life at full draw, or just enjoy going to the camp to crack cold ones with friends and family, Backroads has a design that fits your lifestyle. Represent the brand that prides themselves on being authentic and original. Head over to backroadsapparel.com and grab your gear today. Be sure to use promo code PTB during checkout to receive off your entire order. And again, that's backroadsapparel.com. All right, here we are, Rich. We have been doing this podcast unofficially for years now, talking about what defies the greatest of all time, you know, what classifies being in that conversation. So my first question to you is, when someone asks you, who's the best of this, who's the best at that, what's the number one thing you look at? Is it strictly just talent-based? Is it strictly define what you might consider being the greatest of all time?
I mean, when we talk about greatest, you and I are always talking about legacy. We're talking about, you know, the whole picture, statistics, ability, championships, records, things like that. So when we're talking about the greatest, and I'm not sure which question you're asking me, if you're asking me the best or the greatest, greatest implies the legacy. And I'm not sure if you're asking me who the best is, but just watching a guy that looks like he does it better than everybody else.
I was more so like, how would you define it? Because when someone asks me who is the greatest of all time, and you know, I tried to set this up. Apparently, I did a poor job. I think it's like a 2-part answer. There's a talent-based question, and then there's like the legacy and the resume. And there's sometimes like people just are stat accumulators, like, you know, like we said, like an Emmitt Smith, like where he has all the records. But I don't think anybody ever thinks he's one of the best to actually do it, or I guess the best. So I didn't know if there was a certain criteria that you specifically look at.
I mean, character comes in with that too, and you know, it's their legacy. What do we think about them as an ambassador of the sport that they played? What do we think about what they meant to their team? What do we think about what they meant to the organization and the championships? What are their off the field problems or lack of problems? You know, we don't like our athletes to be involved in political stances, but you know, where do they stand with everything? What do you think of? Do you think of greatness when you look back and look at an athlete? And not to jump ahead, but you know, when we talk about some of the guys we're going to talk about today, some of those guys we wouldn't consider them the greatest because of things that have nothing to do with their play on the court or on the field. So I think that's where you and I kind of always have an issue when we talk about these things is we're talking about the legacy versus the player, and legacy matters. And, there's some of the best players of all time in baseball who aren't in the Hall of Fame. And that goes back to their greatness. And I think that's what the Hall of Fame is enshrining is their greatness. And certain sports writers have decided that because of things that have nothing to do with their play and their ability prevents them from being considered one of the greatest.
Yeah. And for me, I strictly just care, what do you do on the field? Like that's what we're talking here. And, with Brady now winning his 7th Super Bowl, there was a stat. He has bowls, like the percentage of Brady making the Super Bowl is like the same percentage as LeBron making a free throw. Like,
right.
I said on a couple podcasts ago that I think Aaron Rodgers is the most talented thrower of the football that I've ever seen. And of course, I think he's more talented than Brady, but obviously Brady has the resume that it's uncomparable. And I got a lot of backlash with the Rodgers comments. And now, of course, Brady going into Lambeau, winning another Super Bowl. Like, I don't think I can say anything anymore.
No, when you're talking about greatness, I mean, and part of Brady's greatness, and you can see the Buckeyes over my head here, is when he was at Michigan, half of the Michigan fan base and coaching staff didn't even think he was the best quarterback on his roster when he was there. They wanted Drew Henson to play instead of him. And then he gets drafted. Nobody thought he was going to be great when he gets drafted. It's just he's just constantly outperformed expectations on every single level, and to just leave and go do it again. I mean, this is a softball question, because anybody that would argue he's not the greatest quarterback in NFL history just loses any legitimacy of any other argument or point that they could make about anything. I mean, it's just, this one is inarguable. It's completely ridiculous.
Yeah, no. And honestly, it's probably been that way for 3 or 4 years. Like, and then he just keeps adding to it. It's unbelievable what he's doing. And I said this to you about a week ago when we first started talking about doing this. Like, you could have told me in week 8, and you could have said, hey, name the best 10 quarterbacks in the NFL right now. And Brady is borderline on that list. And it's no knock on him. He's a 43-year-old quarterback. Like it's not crazy to say that there's 10 other quarterbacks that were playing better. And not that you would rather build your team around, because that goes without saying, but that were playing better quarterback than he was. And it's not a knock on him. There was just Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers and Pat Mahomes. Like, it's not crazy to say that guy was 8, 9, 10 in the league. But every time December, January, February comes, you just stick your foot in your mouth if you're picking against that guy. And I did it twice.
The most disgusting part of the Super Bowl of football stuff, because I'm not going to get into just where we've gone with all of the off the field social movements in football, so we'll leave that alone. But the most disgusting part about the football part of that game was at the end of the game, listening to his announcers talk about Patrick Mahomes being in the same conversation with Brady, that had Mahomes actually won the game, what would that mean for his climb to the greatest ever? The guy just started, and they're actually literally saying the words on the Super Bowl broadcast, well, he's going to play in a ton of these. How can you say that with the Dan Marinos out there, with the Drew Breeses out there, with the Aaron Rodgers out there, that you can just say, this guy's going to play in a ton of Super Bowls, so we're going to see him, challenge. You're making a huge leap there that he's going to be able to do what Brady has done. You're just giving this guy accolades that he hasn't earned yet, and he's a very, very talented NFL quarterback. And the sky's the limit for the guy. But let's let him win a couple of these things before we start having that conversation. They were actually having the conversation, well, if he wins If he wins the second one and Brady only has 5, what does that mean? We're not even close to the stratosphere of having that conversation of even considering Mahomes a top 30 greatest of all time quarterback, let alone challenging Brady. It was absolutely disgusting to listen to that.
Right. And well, this is where the conversation comes in. Greatest and like best or most talented, because with what he's done in this short period of time, it's almost unmatched at that age. So
Sure.
I'm one of the guys, Hall of Fame wise, I don't need you to play for 15 years like a Frank Gore, who's obviously a Hall of Famer even without lagging on. But like you have these guys like Thomas Jones, and I'm not saying he's going to get in, but I mean, these 6, 7, 800 yards that you're getting at age 35 and 36 just to like pat on these stats. Like I think the 3-year stretch that Arian Foster had, like that's borderline Hall of Famer because that was something that nobody was doing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there should be something for that. Like just because that guy didn't do it for 10 years, like there was a 3-year stretch where he was a top 10 player in the NFL. And that happens with a lot of players. And I think right now, if Mahomes retired today, like he's in that category because he's doing something that nobody has ever done. So while, yes, it's very early to say that he's challenging Tom Brady today, I completely don't think that's happened. But if there's one guy on that path, I mean, right now it is Mahomes.
Yeah, but but we've had this conversation for a decade also of you're not going to have somebody come in and out athlete the NFL. The NFL will catch up to you to what you're doing. The NFL, it has too many coaches, too many analysts, too much speed to out athlete the NFL. And I'm not knocking Mahomes' game, but for my money, the greatness in the Super Bowl, and I can't remember specifically the play, but it was in the third or the fourth quarter when Brady hit Gronk in the hip with the football. The second that safety turned his hips to cover the flat on the outside. That's what I want for my quarterback more often than I want my quarterback to scramble and throw the ball with his offhand and make a first down. Okay, that's not going to last. That kind of play doesn't last. That kind of play, gets injury. The greatness to me is watching that guy manipulate the game and manipulate the scheme and put the ball where it needs to be when it needs to be there, not scrambling and buying time. And until I see Mahomes turn into one of these guys who's doing that, I'm not even going to entertain that he's in the same level as these Breezes and Mannings and Brady and these other guys. And that's for me. That's how you last forever in the NFL, not by extending those plays.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. I do think, I mean, the NFL has changed a little bit over the years where these dynamic athletes are playing the position and not these 5-step drop, throw it like all these guys have a sense of mobility. But I mean, Brady doesn't, and all that guy does is win. And it's just unbelievable what he does. Like just hearing him talk and like you send text messages every day, the whole week. We're going to win. We're going to win. We're going to win. Like he's the man. And there's no doubt about it. He's the greatest football player of all time.
So no doubt about that. So then to get back to our counterpoint, if he's the greatest, is he the best quarterback that you've watched play that position? And if he's not, who is?
No, I still think it's Aaron Rodgers. I mean, the way, like, how can I describe this? Not being like a football quarterback guru and not understanding movements in the pockets. And, I have a pretty good grasp on, okay, this guy's on his third read and he's looking somebody open. Like I can figure that stuff out. That guy makes throws that nobody else can make. Now, I guess the caveat is Patrick Mahomes. He can do things that other guys can't do. But like you said, I'd like to see it a little bit longer before we pass the torch. But it's for me, it's Aaron Rodgers, and I just go back and I remember exactly where I was watching this playoff game against the Cowboys. Dallas just scored. There's like a minute 20 left, and he just throws this ball on the sideline. And there's this meme where there's this one Packers fan, and the game was in Dallas, and he just takes a picture, and he's got this grin on his face, and he's like, they don't realize Aaron Rodgers has like 75 seconds left. And of course they go down, they win the freaking game. Like I want Brady's personality. I want Brady's drive. I want his persona. But if I want a guy just like throwing the football, I want Aaron Rodgers.
And he's probably my 1B. And to me, for my money, when I watched Peyton Manning in his prime in his last couple of years with Indianapolis, that guy was playing a video game on the field. And what he could do to a defense before the ball was snapped, and the game looked slower for him. And he's not a fast guy, but the level of play that he was doing, for my money, it would be Peyton Manning and then Aaron Rodgers. And there's for the greatest of all time, there's no argument against Brady.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. And like you said, if anybody's over here going to try and argue the legacy of Tom Brady with the deflate gate and all this, like, just shut up. Right. I don't want to hear it. So this brings us to what I think is going to be the most interesting debate, and not even a debate, but I guess a hot take, because there's actually people out there that don't think the guy that we unquestionably think is the best baseball player of all time, and it's not Babe Ruth.
It's not even close.
So who do you have as the greatest baseball of all time? And just dive into that.
Well, I think it's impossible to – how much time do we have? I think it's impossible to argue against some of the nostalgic players. The Babe Ruth, considered the greatest of all time for what he was able to do as a pitcher and a fielder and a hitter, and hitting more home runs than entire major league teams and things like that. That's fine for greatness when we're talking about the legacy and what you think of. And unless they had video that didn't exist back then of him doing some kind of crazy stuff, it's going to be tough to take him off of that podium. But best of all time, I mean, I'm going to make a lot of people angry here. I don't think Babe Ruth makes a major league roster today. I mean, we're talking about Babe Ruth only playing against white guys. No Hispanics, no blacks, no Asians. You're only playing against white guys. You're not. This isn't even. What are we even talking about? Like you are not playing against the best players in the world. Number one, you're not even playing against the best players in your country. So how can we say that? Well, he did the best for his time. We don't talk about Jesse Owens being faster than Usain Bolt. We don't talk about Carl Lewis being a better track star than Usain Bolt. That guy ran faster from this line to this line than anybody else in the world. So when we start talking about, well, he was the best in his time, he's still playing with the same amount of gravity. He's still playing with the same amount of things. We're still playing a game, and it's easy to do that with Usain Bolt because he just did it faster than anybody else has ever done things. But for some reason, Babe Ruth and these guys get this pass, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Like, and maybe 50 years from now, we're going to have a conversation that the guys we're talking about weren't the best ever because they weren't playing against the best ever. Well, okay, fine. Maybe we'll have that conversation. But Barry Bonds was the best baseball player, field baseball player ever, and it's not even close. It's not even close. We're not talking about legacy. Sure, it's likely he did steroids. We don't have any hard evidence that he did other than looking at him and using common sense. That guy, what he did on the baseball field, what was it? 9 Gold Gloves, 7 MVPs, how many seasons of 40 home runs and 40 stolen bases? The amount of – I watched the guy get intentionally walked with bases loaded before. Like, this guy was on a different level than everybody else, and it's not even close.
It's really not. One of my favorite to just go just look at not only his stats but other players of that generation or that era. his baseball reference page is the most I've visited that page more than any other website sports related like ever. I mean, Rich, listen to this. This is the craziest of everything, of every stat he has accumulated. This one blows my mind the most. At age 39, he walked 120 times intentionally. People don't have that for their careers. I just looked. Alex Rodriguez, who I think is the second best baseball player of all time, he was walked intentionally 97 times the whole time he played baseball. Barry Bonds at 39 got walked intentionally 120 times.
Barry Bonds got walked 2,558 times in his career.
I mean, I honestly think this is the easiest sports debate that there is. I mean, I guess Brady, now that he's got 7, that really cemented it. But before that, like, it's Bonds. It's not close. The whole steroid thing, like, shove it. You don't think he hit home runs off dudes that took steroids?
Right. We know he did.
Yes. You have to go into that mindset, and this is going to piss off the actual clean guys, and it's not fair to you, and I'm sorry. But you just have to assume that everybody was doing it. You have to.
I would have. I wish somebody would have came out and said, "Did you do steroids?" Yes, I did. I got paid $250 million to take steroids.
Yep. And
nobody cared. And this whole idea that nobody was taking them before the 90s is the stupidest thing in the world. This stuff in the 70s was going crazy everywhere else you look, and Major League Baseball wasn't even testing for them. So to give guys a pass from the 70s that nobody was taking steroids and they did it the right way. We have guys in the Hall of Fame who are known cheaters, known spitballers. We know they broke the rules in the rule book, that they're not allowed to do that. They get ejected from games and suspended, but that's okay. But this other thing, you know what I mean? So which one is it? You know, But they asked Mike Scioscia when the Angels were really good. I think it was the year maybe they played them in the World Series. They said, "Who do you think's the best player on the planet today?" He goes, "What are you talking about? It's the guy we won't throw the ball to. We won't pitch to that guy. Yeah. Why are you asking me that?"
Yeah, I know. It doesn't make any sense. Like, the amount of bold where he's led the league and average, on base percentage, home runs, like, it's just every year there was no question for like 10 years who's the best player in the league. Like, it was Bonds every year. There's a reason he won back-to-back MVPs. Like, that's not a fluke. That doesn't just happen on accident. That guy's the best ever.
The guy had 40 stolen bases when he was 31 years old. Like, everybody remembers him at the end where he was real big. That guy had how many 40-40 seasons? I don't have it in front of me.
I think just one.
I don't know. I'm not going to waste any time looking at my stat sheet that's a mile long because of how long this guy did it, but he was unbelievable. So
yeah.
Then you and I try to talk about pitchers, like who are the greatest pitchers. I can't even. There's so many people that would make that list. There's so many people who dominated the game, but you and I kind of came up with one today, and this guy, I mean, he was so scary. I mean, Birds committed suicide by jumping in front of his fastball. I mean, guys in the All-Star game wouldn't even bat on that side of the plate. I mean, when Randy Johnson was playing, I don't think I ever watched a guy do a more dominating stretch. And we did talk about Pedro Martinez too. And there's a long list of guys who did a 4 or 5 year stretch that seemed to be unhittable. But how old was Randy Johnson when he was doing that?
In his mid to late 30s. I told you this. He won 4 straight Cy Youngs. 4. 35, 36, 37, 38. Had over 334.
334.
Struck out 1,400 batters in that time in his 1,000 innings that he pitched. If somebody strikes out 200 batters now, like, that's an achievement. You get to 250, you're probably winning the Cy Young. Kershaw struck out 300 a couple years ago, and it was like, oh my God, we haven't seen this in 15 years. He did it 4 years in a row and was 34% better than like Randy Johnson was the most intimidating pitcher, and I'm only going to say that because like I didn't get to watch Nolan Ryan live, although he did give a noogie and punch Robin Ventura right in the face. So I don't know if Randy Johnson would have done that. So if anything, he's probably the second most intimidating pitcher ever. But I also don't want to just dismiss Pedro because during like that same time that Johnson was winning all these Cy Youngs, like Pedro won 3 out of 4 and finished second the other year. Like that dude didn't let anybody on base. He was so intimidating in like such just a different way. Like Randy Johnson's 6'10", who knows how big lefty coming off the mound, and Pedro's like just this little guy that will just eat you up. So what I have done, just to take the easy way out, I have a greatest right-handed pitcher of all time and a greatest left-handed pitcher of all time, and I don't know how you cannot call them like those respective things. And again, like I know you have your Bob Gibsons and all these Goose Gossage, if you want to put him in there, all of these other guys. Like, I just don't think the talent was as good. And if you're topping out at 88, like you're not Randy Johnson. I don't care.
No, there's no question that with science and technology and metrics now, we're able to get the most out of the human body in athletics. It still blows my mind because people were throwing a ball 100 miles an hour 30 years ago, and you still only have 10 guys that can throw it 100. Am I right about that or no? So
today,
yeah.
Oh no, there's probably 3 guys on each team that can throw 100. Now, not sit 100 and throw it 10 times in a row, but yeah, all these dudes throw. It's unbelievable. Like, you got starters throwing 100. What Verlander in one of the playoff games last year was hitting 99 in like this 8th inning.
Hey, so Jacob Dees is asking about Greg Maddox. We talked about him earlier too. What that guy did.
We did mention Maddox. There was an obscure stat, and I might botch this. I don't know if you remember it. He faced over 20,000 batters in his career, and 4-pitch walked 250 of them. Ball. And 150 of them, or 130 of them, were intentionally. That's over 12, 13 years in the big leagues. And that happens out of bullpens by the same guy twice in the same inning.
There's another stat I heard one time, and I don't have it, and you guys can look it up. There was something about the number of batters he faced and non-intentional walks, how many like 2-0 counts or 3-0 counts he got to batters one. It was like none. Like it was so the control that guy had. And the greatness of that guy is that he couldn't throw it 95, 98 miles an hour.
Yeah, he's the definition of a pitcher. Some of these other guys are just throwers. That dude just knew how to pitch.
Yeah, so
go ahead.
I'm going to fail and concede, and because of the history of the game, and because of the separation of the Negro leagues, and because of the I'm not gonna label greatest pitchers because it's just, I mean, starters today are only going 7 innings. They're not pitching complete games like they used to. So I'm gonna balk and not do greatest pitchers, but Randy Johnson was the best in his prime for my money. And I hate Pedro Martinez because you got to remember that's back when my Indians were always in the playoffs battling with him. But man, and he was such an ass too. But man, was he good? He was unbelievable.
He's so good. I have this just hit me. Do you think those pitchers in the 90s, they got to throw 7, 8, 9 innings, 120 pitches, 130 pitches? Do you think maybe they could have been taking something to make them recover faster that they're not allowed to take today?
I mean, people forget that Andy Pettit was taking stuff. Like, of course they were. Of course they were. And I'm not saying that to tarnish these players' morals or legacy, because I would blame Major League Baseball that it was encouraged and it was fine, and it was kind of don't ask, don't tell kind of stuff. So I'm not talking about the morality of these players or whether they were a good guy or not, but absolutely they were.
If you want to take this stuff to recover faster so you can play more, I don't have any problem with it. Now, like if you're in and you're taking steroids to bench 400 pounds, like that's not really helping you. That's not why you're doing it. You're doing it to pitch every 5 days and go 8 innings every time. And I'm cool with that. That doesn't bother me at all.
Well, and I'm not a doctor, but I think the purpose of the rule is to not force guys to do something that's detrimental to their health to compete. And, you're talking to a guy who takes steroids, because I'm an old man now. So, I mean, like what am I talking about? But if there's no health risk associated with it, it's a subjective scale of vitamins versus, performance enhancers. What's a performance enhancer? You know what I mean?
Right.
Caffeine. Like, so I'm not going to get into all that. So where do you want to go to next? We got some really nasty stuff.
Yeah, I say we'll just dive right in it and, get the action board, take $1 million. I mean,
well, can we do briefly hit on the Tiger Jack stuff that we talked about earlier before we do LeBron Jordan?
Yeah. You want to dive in? You want to dive into Tiger? I will tee it up, pun intended. And give me your thoughts on the Tiger versus Nicholas debate. And let me first say, before we had this conversation, I was going to argue that there wasn't a more dominant athlete at his sport than Tiger Woods. And I was going to potentially say that there was nobody more dominant ever in any sport than Tiger was at his. And then you hit me with these Jack stats. And now, as big of a Tiger fan as I am, and basically everybody I know, we wear red on Sundays just because we're Nike swooshes everywhere, like because of Tiger. I don't know if that is the right answer anymore. So tell me what you found and what you researched on this Tiger Jack debate. So
I was, and maybe still am, going to say this is an easy one to start with. Jack's the greatest, Tiger's the best of all time. This, the Tiger's off the field stuff versus him never catching Jack in the majors category made that greatest one very easy to do. And then you look at Tiger's dominance, and then you said, okay, he was the best. So the majors are Jack had 18, Tiger had 15. The stat that is really mind-blowing is that Jack finished 19 times in second place also, which means he has 37 top 2 finishes in majors. I don't know if I said Masters on accident.
No,
okay.
That's unbelievable.
Now that's to Tiger's 15 majors and 6 second place finishes, making him have 21 top 2 finishes. And this is a segue to our next topic. But why doesn't a second place finish mean anything? I don't understand that. Like, why does second place not count? So you're talking about 37 top 2 finishes in majors versus 21. And that just solidifies the greatest. And again, we're talking about a Tiger Woods who's transcended the sport. Yes, he's playing against better players. And part of that's his fault, because he's got guys that are good golfers now that maybe were golfing because they thought he was cool. And And then people also want to argue that, well, Tiger's playing against, Vijay Singh and Ernie Els and Phil Mickelson and these guys when he was younger. But Jack was playing against guys too. Jack was playing against, Palmer. He was playing against Watson. He was playing against Gary Player, Lee Trevino. Like, he was playing against these guys too. So he had greats that he was playing against too. But again, the 19 second place finishes is a stat that a lot of people don't know, and that's just wild.
Yeah. Now I wonder, like, if Tiger, who needs 4 more, maybe, like, if he gets that, but I mean, god damn, dude, 19 second place finishes, that should be talked about more. And it's actually crazy that it's not, but like you said, apparently sometimes finishing second place is a bad thing. And that will just lead us right into this Jordan LeBron debate. Let's do it again, because apparently we just need to do it. Whenever you're talking about the greatest of all times, this is the debate. LeBron, Jordan is better. And 2 things I'm going to just say right off the bat. What annoys me most about this is if you're pro Jordan, there's a lot of you pro Jordan guys that try and give me your point and then tell me maybe not 10. That's shit. When I hear LeBron people make this debate, make the case for LeBron number 1, it's because they're saying Jordan is 2. Like this is the top 2. But the Jordan obsessed people are just so afraid, and they try and make LeBron so far away from him in these hypothetical rankings that, like, they're poo-pooing on him, and it almost makes me root for LeBron even more, just to make those guys that much more wrong.
Well, there's this consensus, and I'm just speculating based on your age that a lot of your followers here are around the same age. So you guys saw the end of Jordan, and then there's my age, and then my dad's age group of people who were getting a modernized, national cable network, and they were seeing guys play, and the nostalgia associated with watching Jordan change the game, they somehow take some kind of personal ownership that, well, you'll hear people say, I saw him play. I saw him do it differently. Like that somehow their ownership of it negates the accomplishments of what LeBron's doing. Again, you can't make an argument that LeBron's better than Jordan by saying how bad Jordan was at anything. But you can't do it the other way either. And you can't say it the other way either, that, well, LeBron's better because Jordan sucked at this, this, and this. Those guys don't have those things in there.
Right.
So what you can kind of do is start measuring the 2 greatest players. But the worst argument of all, the stupidest, worst argument is 6-0. That's all I have to say, 6-0. That is such a terrible argument, and we're going to tell you why.
If you are why Jordan is better than LeBron, when we are talking about individual greatness and individual accolades, and the first thing you lead with is 6-0, I'm already dismissing you, and I don't care what you have to say from here on out. Because I'll listen to the argument. I watched the Last Dance, and, I guess maybe outside of Tom Brady, Kobe, nobody was mentally built like Jordan was. That dude wanted it more than everybody on the court every time he played, every game. But there's more to it than just having that particular killer mindset. And I just can't stand, first thing, 6-0. Like, no, I'm not listening to you. And tell me why 6-0 is not as good as people think that it is.
Because you're punishing a guy for winning games. You're saying, hey, Jordan, you lost 3 times in the first round. You never got to the finals. So that's better than getting to the finals. How is losing in the first round better than getting to the finals? That's ridiculous. So 8th place is better than 2nd place? How is that an argument? They came in 8th place, so that's better than LeBron losing in the finals. So at this point, LeBron has played 18 seasons, made the playoffs 14 times. In 14 times making the playoffs, he's been to the finals 10 times. Jordan made it to the playoffs 13 times and made it to the finals 6 times. So let's equal that playing field. Let's put Jordan in the same amount of finals and say that they were 6-4 in the finals. Does that make his legacy better or worse if they're 6-4 in the finals? Because from what I'm hearing from everybody out there, 6-4 in the finals is worse than 6-0 in the finals.
And
is that logical?
Losing in the championship game is not the worst thing you can do. Not making
losing
it
in the first
is way worse. Yes, I agree. Not making it to the finals is worse than making the finals and losing. I don't know why people don't wrap their heads around this.
That's the worst. The 6-0 argument is the worst one. It's the worst one. That's rewarding Jordan for losing earlier than LeBron did. And that's not knocking Jordan. That's just saying, look, you can't reward losing. You can't reward losing. That doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
So
go ahead.
No, they're just people that Stephen A. Smith, who sometimes I think is funny, people love and hate this guy. He's on the record as saying there's nothing LeBron can do to ever become the greatest. That's the general attitude that people have, is that there's nothing that can be accomplished that will be making him considered the greatest of all time. And I've got a real rude wake-up call for people. He might be there now, maybe not, but you're going to have to wrap your head around the fact that it's possible, because 6-6 in the finals, if he does it, is better than 6-0 in the finals, no matter how you look at it. My kids wrestle in wrestling tournaments, right? So if my kid wins 2 tournaments and doesn't place in the rest of them, that's not as good as him winning 2 tournaments and coming in 3rd in 4 other ones. It doesn't make any sense.
I agree. And your brother Dennis, 6-0 is impressive if Jordan only plays 6 seasons. Well, I'm going to use this catchphrase. I got to do it better. Pump the brakes, Dennis. 6-0 is still really, really impressive. That's incredibly impressive. But there's better ratios out there than 6-0. 6-1 is better than 6-0. 6-2 is better than 6-0. That's not to discredit going 6-0, because going 6-0 is unbelievable. But there's just better ones out there. Like Bill Russell won 11 championships in the 13 years that he played in the NBA. But when you say 6-0, if I counter to that, you'll be like, yeah, so what? No, it's the same argument that you're making about 6-0. This guy just won 11 of them. So if your only argument or your main argument is Jordan has 6 rings, then I can't say anything but Bill Russell has 11. Now where are you going to go? Now what's your next argument?
Robert Horry has 7. So then when you actually look at, people will make up, well, he was more clutch. According to the metrics of, I don't know specifically, we talked about that, a clutch shot in the playoffs is considered in the last few minutes down or up by a certain amount of points. And then there's buzzer beaters, and they're virtually tied, except LeBron is like a percentage point better in those. And then you look at their regular season stats. LeBron's a better shooter than Jordan. Career, LeBron shoots 50.4%. Jordan shoots 49.7%. That's not knocking Jordan saying he's a bad shooter, but LeBron's just a little bit better of a shooter. 3-point percentage. Jordan was
49% is really good.
Yeah, Jordan shot 32.7% from 3-point. LeBron shoots 34.5%. He's a little bit better at shooting. LeBron has more assists a game, 7.4 to Jordan's 5.3. The only 3 statistics that Jordan beats LeBron in the regular season is points per game by 3, because he takes more shots, if you know anything about math, steals, and free throw percentage. And then you say, well, he was better in the playoffs. No, he wasn't. They both played the same minutes. LeBron shoots 49.6% from the floor. Jordan shoots 0.9% lower at 48.7. 3-point percentage, Jordan's 33.2, LeBron's 33.5. So you you can't say he's more clutch. You can't say that he's a better shooter. All you can say is that he shot more. And that obviously goes with the assists. LeBron averages about 2 more a game than Jordan in the playoffs and the regular season. Again, you can't make this argument by knocking one guy and saying, well, he wasn't good at this, so the other guy's better. But the other measurable statistics is, have you seen the size of LeBron James? If I have identical stats, I'll take the bigger, faster guy than the smaller guy, right?
I mean, yeah. We've been on this train for years, and he's showing no signs of slowing down. Like normally you get to age 33, 34, 35, and you start to go on that downward slope of your career as just, father time wins all the time. He's going up still. Like he's not stopping anytime soon. And he's the best player on what everybody says is the best team. I know the Jazz are technically, I believe they're still in first place, but he's the best player on the best team. Now, today, still. He's not stopping anytime soon.
And the sports writers do the same thing with this Jordan argument. The fact that you ever give anybody in the NBA the MVP except for LeBron James is criminal. And then let's talk about real quick. Well, Jordan didn't have anybody with the Bulls, except when Jordan went on his unofficial suspension from the NBA, his team won 55 games without him. 55-27 without Jordan. That was their record. 55-27. The 3 times LeBron has left the team, the Cavs were 19-63. The Heat were 37-45. And then the Cavs again were 19-63 without him. I mean, the guy, just not giving the guy credit. And somebody posted on here, Andrew did. I grew up in Cleveland, and I don't like arguments of authority like I'm from here, I know better than you. But we knew about this kid when he was a sophomore. He was the next Jordan when he was a sophomore in high school. And guess what? He's the next Jordan. How many guys have we heard that about that don't live up to it? This guy was crowned the king in high school. And he is.
I think I still have that Sports Illustrated cover. Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say that it amazes me that people still debate this, but it amazes me that they still use the same arguments, like while LeBron is still playing and still winning championships and still just adding to this legacy that he has. And again, I'm not a huge critiquer of stuff off the court or off the field, but like this guy's been in the spotlight for 20 years, and there's not a blemish on he's never in trouble. He's always guy again. Yeah, outside of whether you agree or disagree with his political views, because again, I don't like that in sports. I try and stay away from. But I mean, even if that is his blemish, that you don't like his political views, like whatever, dude, who cares? Watch the dude play basketball and just enjoy this, because like you said, the odds of us seeing this again are it's slim to none.
Yeah, people need to appreciate what they're watching, and you don't have to like the guy. I mean, there's a lot of athletes we don't like, but this idea, well, LeBron couldn't play back with the bad boys of Detroit and everything like that. Really? The guy who's 30 pounds bigger than Jordan couldn't take a hit better than Jordan could? Like, the NBA is a different game right now, but it's a better game right now. It's not like Bill Laimbeer wouldn't make a basketball team now. Like, give me a break. Like, these guys, this idea that LeBron's not tough enough, they call fouls differently now. They call flagrant fouls differently now. The rules of the game are different, and that doesn't mean that LeBron couldn't function in the old system of the rules. That's silliness. The ball is still the same size. The hoop is still the same size.
To say a guy that's like 6'8", 6'9", 250, and probably, I'm going to lowball this, runs a 4.6, I think he would be fine playing in whatever era you put him in. That guy would be fine playing 20 years from now when those athletes are bigger. LeBron is the exception to the rule. He is the most freakish athlete we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, let Joe Dumars go foul him hard in the paint one time and take a charge. Like you want to make the rules so you're allowed to hit more, and you're going to make that a disadvantage for LeBron.
Yeah,
like really.
You said this to me years ago. LeBron had a quote where he said, "If I'm going to lead the league in points, I will. If I'm going to lead the league in rebounds, I will. If I'm going to lead the league in assists, I will." Like he can just do everything.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we've officially said yet on this podcast that LeBron's the greatest of all time.
Yes.
It's not over. I'm still going to say that Jordan, right now, today, is the greatest of all time. But LeBron's the best basketball player to ever play. And
I'll still concede. Go ahead.
Yeah, and it's not over. It's close. I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit coming through.
No, you're good. I was just going to say, if you want to tell me that the legacy that Jordan has, because what Jordan has done, like he's not a basketball player anymore. Like he's a brand. Like Jordan has created a brand that is going to go unmatched. But just so I kind of include that in Jordan's legacy. Like when he goes, the shoes are still going to sell. Basketball teams are still going to be sponsored by Jordan. Football teams are still going to be sponsored by Jordan. Like, and just so I still give that legacy part to Jordan, and that's fine. I'll concede a little bit there. But yeah, if you're going to tell me you get to start a team, you get LeBron or Jordan, I'm not even hesitant. It's LeBron. It's not even close.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's not. It's not. And I might take Shaq over Jordan if I'm starting a team too, to be honest with you. I mean, that guy.
Well, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because that leads into what I want the last question to be. And this is where I was going to go with the Tiger until you kind of talk me off the cliff. I want to know the most dominant athlete. I don't know why that's scrolling on the bottom line like that. I want to know who you think the most dominant athlete, who dominated their sport more than any other. And I'm going to start, and I'm going to, because I know this isn't your area of expertise. We didn't really get on hockey, and I've confessed my love for baseball reference, and hockey reference is the exact same. You go look at Wayne Gretzky's stats. It is unbelievable. If you think Barry Bonds had a whole bunch of bold, and you scroll down and it'll tell you his list of, where he ranked in walks and hits and home runs and all this. If you go do that on Gretzky, every parenthesis is first. He was first in goals and points and assists. He was first in everything. And I know the game has changed. Goalies' pads are bigger. Players develop, they're bigger, faster, stronger. It's what he did in his era is unmatched.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a hockey guy, but that almost validates your argument that I know I can't. So hockey, it's Gretzky, and then you move on, and then you can debate the other sports. You can debate the other sports. You can't debate hockey. I mean, some of the pages, the old timers will reference that Gordie Howe deserves to be mentioned in hockey. But who else is nicknamed the Great One? I mean, what are we talking about? I mean, I would say, even when we're making this LeBron argument or Jordan argument, you would actually have to watch the games to see how much better Jordan was than Allen Iverson, because Allen Iverson would have seasons of good stats. You would have to watch the games to see why LeBron's better than Kobe, and then it would be subjective. When you can just look at the stat lines alone, you're looking at an era of a Barry Bonds and a Wayne Gretzky. And as a non-hockey guy, I think that you have to give it to Gretzky. That's the most unquestioned guy to dominate a sport.
Yeah, no, I agree. And nowadays, when a player hits 100 points, goals and assists, like Gretzky had over 200 4 times. And now if a player gets 100, it's okay, that guy's probably going to be the MVP of the league. And it's just a different animal. Like we're talking, like they play 82 games, and that guy is going to account for some type of 2 goals a game, 3 goals a game. Like I wish I was alive and gambling back then, because I would just bet the over on every game that whatever team he was on at the time, Kings, Blues, Rangers, I would bet the over every time.
Yeah, I mean, all I can tell you about hockey is, I grew up in Cleveland. We didn't have much hockey, but when Sega Genesis came out with NHL hockey, which was like the game at the time, you wanted to be the Kings. That's who you wanted to be.
Yeah, you want number 99. You want number 99 the way like people wanted 23. But I really wanted to put Tiger in this. I really wanted to dive in and make a case, because that run that he had from like 99 to 04, 05, like people were scared to play with him.
He does have more wins overall than Jack. And for all of us who watched it, I mean, you're turning on, majors where he's up by double digits in strokes. I mean, I think he did definitely dominate that sport for a time better than anybody else did. And, it was just unfair. But again, that's hard for us to do because we didn't watch the same thing happen at the same time when Jack was playing. So, I would go with Gretzky, which is boring for me because, again, I've literally watched 20 hockey games in my life. So, and 3 of them have been my friend Derek, who just plays in a men's league out in Brandon. So, but yeah, Tiger was dominant, and I know this is kind of messy, but I think this podcast is more to get people to open up to the possibility that there's a difference between crowning somebody the greatest and who's the best at what they do. And I just encourage all the LeBron haters out there, if you hate him, great, but watch, because you're never going to have somebody you hate be this good ever again in the rest of your life. And it's going to be fun to watch how long he can do it for.
Yeah. And I mean, even to emphasize that, like, legacy and talent don't always match up, because, like, again, in the little pre-show meeting we had, like, yeah, you could say Bo Jackson was probably the most talented player at running back ever. That's going to be hard to argue, but he only did it for 2 years, so his legacy doesn't match up. And like as I keep saying this because he's still playing at a decent level, but like Frank Gore, like you don't actually think Frank Gore is more talented than Bo Jackson was, but
or Barry
he's going to be a Hall of Famer. Yeah, I mean, so that's where it just legacy don't always match up. It's not always the same thing.
No, it's definitely not.
Right.
But thank you for having me on, man. I've been looking forward to this conversation on your podcast for so long. Really appreciate you having me on here. Excited for you. Thanks for all the comments and participating from everybody.
Yeah, and we'll definitely do this again sometime.
Thanks, man.
All right, see you. All right, that is going to wrap up this episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our Apple Podcast, give 5-star reviews. Do the same thing on YouTube. Subscribe, rate, review. I cannot emphasize that enough. We need all of the support that we can get. The text, the messages, the phone calls, even the bad ones that are begging me to do this more often. I'm trying like hell, I promise. And to that, we sign off. Cheers.